The incident occurred at an upscale boutique in Barcelona's Passeig de Gracia during a busy Saturday afternoon when Ronaldo was shopping for his daughter's birthday gift, and he witnessed what appeared to be a routine customer service interaction transform into something far more troubling when the store owner's demeanor changed dramatically upon seeing a young Muslim woman enter wearing a hijab. Her polite greeting met not with the welcoming smile that had been offered to previous customers, but with barely concealed hostility that made it immediately clear she was not welcome in an establishment that seemed to reserve its courtesy and service for customers who fit certain expectations about appearance, religion, and cultural background that excluded people whose presence challenged the store's desired aesthetic or clientele demographics. The woman who had entered the store was named Amina, a 25-year-old doctoral student in architecture who had saved money from her part-time job as a research assistant to purchase a professional outfit for an important academic conference where she would be presenting her research on sustainable urban design, and her excitement about finding clothing that would help her project confidence and professionalism during a career-defining presentation was immediately dampened by the store owner's obvious reluctance to serve her. His body language and tone of voice making it clear that he viewed her presence as an inconvenience rather than a business opportunity that should have been welcomed by someone whose profits depended on customer satisfaction and repeat business. The store owner's discriminatory behavior began subtly, with delays in acknowledging Amina's presence while he continued chatting with another customer about trivial matters, followed by curt responses to her questions about sizes and prices that contrasted sharply with the detailed attention and enthusiastic assistance that he had been providing to other shoppers. And when Amina attempted to try on a dress that she was considering purchasing, she was told that the fitting rooms were temporarily closed for cleaning, despite the fact that other customers had been using them moments earlier without any indication of maintenance issues or hygiene concerns that would justify such restrictions. Ronaldo observed this treatment with growing discomfort and recognition of discriminatory patterns that he had witnessed in other contexts where service providers used their authority to exclude or humiliate customers based on prejudice rather than legitimate business considerations. And when the store owner's behavior escalated to openly dismissive comments about Amina's appearance and suggestions that she might be more comfortable shopping elsewhere for clothing that was more appropriate for someone with her background, Ronaldo realized that remaining silent would make him complicit in discrimination that violated both basic human decency and legal protections against religious discrimination in commercial establishments. The confrontation that followed began when Ronaldo approached the store owner and asked directly whether the store's policy was to refuse service to Muslim customers. His question delivered in a calm but firm tone that made it clear he had been observing the discriminatory treatment and was prepared to address it publicly rather than allowing it to continue without challenge. And the store owner's immediate defensive response revealed both his awareness that his behavior was inappropriate and his assumption that even if customers noticed discriminatory treatment, they would be unlikely to intervene in situations that didn't directly affect them personally. "I saw you helping other customers try on clothes," Ronaldo said, his voice carrying clearly enough for other shoppers to hear. "But when this young woman asked to use the fitting room, you told her it was closed for cleaning. And when she asked questions about your merchandise, you gave her completely different treatment than you gave to everyone else who walked in here before her. So I'm wondering if you can explain what your actual store policy is regarding Muslim customers. Because what I observed seems like illegal discrimination disguised as customer service." The store owner's attempt to deny discriminatory treatment was undermined by the obvious inconsistency between his explanation and the behavior that multiple witnesses had observed. And when he claimed that the fitting room closure was a genuine maintenance issue, Ronaldo pointed out that other customers had continued using those facilities after Amina had been refused access, making it clear that the restriction had been applied selectively based on her appearance, rather than any legitimate operational concerns that would have affected all customers equally. Amina's response to Ronaldo's intervention was initially one of surprise and gratitude, but also embarrassment that her attempt to shop for professional clothing had become a public spectacle that drew attention to discrimination she had been hoping to handle quietly by simply leaving and finding another store where she could make her purchase without facing hostility or humiliation. Though she also expressed appreciation that someone had been willing to speak up when they witnessed unfair treatment, rather than simply observing silently while she was subjected to behavior that made her feel unwelcome and diminished in a commercial establishment where she should have been treated with the same respect afforded to any paying customer. The confrontation escalated when the store owner suggested that Ronaldo was overreacting to normal business practices and that private businesses had the right to serve customers as they saw fit. But Ronaldo's response demonstrated his understanding of both legal and moral issues involved in discriminatory service practices, pointing out that refusing service based on religion was illegal under Spanish anti-discrimination laws, and that using business ownership as an excuse for prejudice was exactly the kind of thinking that had historically justified exclusion and mistreatment of minority groups who deserved equal access to commercial services, regardless of their religious beliefs or cultural practices. The other customers in the store had initially tried to ignore the confrontation. But as Ronaldo's challenge to the store owner became more direct and explicit, several people began paying closer attention to what was happening, and some expressed support for his position, while others seemed uncomfortable with the attention being drawn to discriminatory behavior that they had witnessed but had chosen not to address, creating a social dynamic where the store owner found himself defending practices that looked increasingly indefensible when subjected to public scrutiny and moral challenge from someone whose influence and platform gave weight to his criticism. The resolution of the immediate situation involved the store owner grudgingly allowing Amina to try on the clothing she had been interested in purchasing, but his compliance was clearly reluctant and motivated more by fear of negative publicity than by genuine recognition that his behavior had been wrong. And when Amina decided that she no longer felt comfortable making purchases from someone who had treated her with such obvious hostility, Ronaldo suggested that they find another store where she could shop without facing discrimination that would taint her experience and potentially undermine her confidence during the important academic presentation she was preparing for. The shopping trip that followed took them to several other boutiques where Amina was treated with courtesy and professionalism that should have been standard rather than exceptional. And during their conversations while visiting these stores, Ronaldo learned about the broader patterns of discrimination that she and other Muslim women faced when trying to access services and opportunities that were readily available to people whose appearance and religious practices didn't trigger stereotypes and prejudices that affected everything from employment opportunities to housing applications to simple commercial transactions that should have been straightforward, but became complicated by other people's biases and assumptions. The legal action that followed was initiated not by Ronaldo, but by civil rights organizations that learned about the incident and used it as an opportunity to challenge discriminatory practices by commercial establishments throughout Spain, with Amina agreeing to serve as a plaintiff in discrimination lawsuits that sought not just individual compensation, but policy changes that would prevent similar treatment of other Muslim customers who might not have celebrity advocates available to intervene when they face discrimination that was often subtle enough to deny, but obvious enough to create hostile environments that excluded entire communities from full participation in commercial and social life. The business impact on the discriminatory store was immediate and severe, with boycotts organized by civil rights groups and negative publicity that resulted in significant loss of revenue and eventually forced the owner to close his establishment. Though some critics argued that destroying someone's livelihood over a single incident of poor customer service was disproportionate punishment that ignored the possibility of education and reform rather than economic destruction, while supporters maintained that discriminatory businesses deserved to fail if they couldn't provide equal service to all customers, regardless of their religious or cultural backgrounds. The foundation that emerged from this incident focused on supporting Muslim women who face discrimination in employment, education, and commercial settings, providing legal assistance for people who experienced religious discrimination, advocacy for stronger enforcement of anti-discrimination laws, and educational programs that helped business owners understand their legal obligations and moral responsibilities to serve all customers equally, regardless of personal prejudices, that had no place in commercial establishments that benefited from public infrastructure and legal protections that came with obligations to serve the public without discrimination based on protected characteristics. Years later, when Amina had completed her doctoral degree and established a successful architectural practice that specialized in designing inclusive public spaces that welcomed people from all backgrounds, when the anti-discrimination programs had helped hundreds of Muslim women access services and opportunities that had previously been denied through subtle but pervasive prejudice, when business training programs had educated thousands of commercial establishment owners about legal requirements and best practices for serving diverse customer bases, Ronaldo would reflect that intervening in the boutique incident had been one of the easiest decisions of his career, because it represented a basic choice between allowing discrimination to continue unchallenged or using his influence to defend someone who was being treated unfairly simply because of her religious beliefs and cultural practices that should have been irrelevant to her ability to purchase clothing in a store that claimed to welcome all customers, but actually reserved its hospitality for people whom unstated criteria about acceptable appearance and religious affiliation.